All right, so let's spend some time talking about trauma in the context of a toxic relationship. And we need to understand how trauma affects our well being and our entire body. So, trauma from a toxic relationship is going to occur when we have been exposed to prolonged periods of different types of abuse. And if you recall, abuse overlaps the different types of abuse. Very rarely do you have, actually, can't think of any time that you would have physical abuse that you do not have emotional abuse. There are different types like emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, social. These types of abuse are going to affect you in different ways, but they are all, the purpose of them all is power and control. And manipulation is one of the MOs for this power and control. When someone is manipulated and they are being controlled, this undermines their individuality, their humanity, and their safety, essentially. And toxic relationships may not always be outwardly or obviously abusive, but the very nature of what abuse is makes a toxic relationship abusive. And let me explain what I mean by that. The definition of abuse is when something is used for a purpose other than what it is meant for. So, when you are in a relationship with someone who is taking advantage of you repeatedly and they are using the relationship for their own status, their own gain, their own purpose, and are disregarding your needs, your involvement and participation in the relationship as a willing and active participant, and the whole purpose of being in that relationship is so that they can get something out of it, that is an abusive relationship. And this is where the toxicity comes from. Quite often, the perpetrator is coming from a place of narcissism. Do they always have narcissistic personality disorder? No. But the concept of someone being narcissistic, that they are only concerned about themselves, putting themselves first, disregarding your needs, your wants, your desires, your individuality, your humanity, that is a place of narcissism that they are coming from. So when we speak about narcissism in the context of this course, that's where we're coming from. It's where one partner manipulates and controls the other person to maintain that power. Now, emotional manipulation, such as gaslighting, crazy making, those mind games that they play, the whole reason is to make the victim doubt their reality, doubt their feelings, doubt their own beliefs. And so this makes them dependent on the person who is creating this type of mental environment. And this is how the cycle of abuse kind of begins and how it continues. So in a toxic relationship, in an abusive relationship, it is a cycle. You have a period of what is called typically it starts with like a love bombing, where they start off really great, too good to be true, lots of gifts and compliments, and greatest person in the world, lots of charm, maybe even extravagant trips, and maybe moving very, very fast. That's how things start. And then you get into it. Maybe there's a commitment that's made. Maybe you fall in love. Maybe you get married. Maybe you move in together. This is when the next stage starts, which is the intensifying. You're walking on eggshells. Things are getting heated. They're getting awkward. They're getting tense, and you just know that something's not right. So you start to kind of do things to placate them. You do start doing things to please them so that whatever you fear is coming doesn't come. If you've been in it for a while, this would look like trying to clean up the house really quickly and frantically so that they don't explode, or covering your tracks so that they don't know that you got coffee with a friend today, or, um, you know, working really hard to make extra money to cover for the lunch that you got at Zaxby's today. Things like that that are just should be normal parts of life, but you are doing everything you can to keep them from exploding, because that's what happens next. So there's the eggshells, there's the saying all the right things so you don't piss them off, waiting on them hand and foot, and then there's the explosion. Nothing you do is going to prevent the explosion from coming. That is the attack, that's the incident, that's the fight, that's the yelling, the screaming, the throwing things, punching walls, God forbid, possibly punching you, being physically abusive. Um, it could be something that happens behind closed doors in the bedroom, if you know what I mean. There could be uh, going through your phone and trying to accuse you of cheating. Some kind of explosion that you now are put into this place of defense, or you're crushed, your heart is broken, you're confused, I don't know where this is coming from, your whole world is turned upside down because this makes absolutely no sense at all, but yet it's happening. That's the explosion, that's the abusive event. So then what happens behind that is some kind of retribution or makeup, even if it's they might apologize, but the apology isn't taking accountability for their actions. It's, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry that you got mad, or I'm sorry that, let's see, was something very vague. It could just say simply, I'm sorry, with no, I'm sorry that I yelled at you, that was wrong of me, and I shouldn't have done that. There's none of that. It's, well, I'm sorry that we fought, or I, I promise I won't do it again. It. There's no specificity in this apology. It's what they're trying to do is just say whatever they need to get you to shut up, because you're crying, you're blubbering, you're frantic, maybe you ran away, they're trying to get you to come back. This is a very generic band-aid that they pull out of their pockets to put onto the situation, even if it's they might even say things like, if you hadn't done XYZ, then I wouldn't have yada yada yada. That's even part of their band-aid, because it gets you to take accountability for their actions. And then the next stage is so it either could be honeymoon, or it could be just the lull. It could be the status quo. Life is just going on as normal. Nothing's really happening. It's quiet. And this is what keeps people. This is what makes these things so hard to break away from. And this is what causes that trauma bond as well. Because quite often after that explosive event, there is some kind of peace that comes over on the other side. And that could last a couple of hours, it could last a couple of days, it could last weeks, months, typically not years, but it could last a short amount of time or a long amount of time. It doesn't matter, because what the brain is perceiving is that there is an event and then there is peace. And that's what causes this disconnect in your brain, because you don't actually complete the process of the traumatic event. Everything just kind of goes back to normal, and there's no real processing of anything. We stuff it and we move on. So it gets stuck in our body. Now let's look at some of the effects of what happens when we get into this toxic state. So the first thing that we want to look at is like the physical health effects. If this is the type of relationship that's going on for years, or honestly, it could have been as short as 8 months. But if it goes on for more than just a couple of days, your body starts to react, because Think about it, you're put into a state of fight or flight. That wasn't meant to happen for more than 30 minutes. Your body was not designed to be in fight or flight for more than 30 minutes. It's designed to either outchase the lion, fight the lion, or get eaten. That's it. And so it's a short burst of energy that your brain gets activated. It is not meant for prolonged periods of time. Now, what's going to happen is we end up with chronic pain. We end up with gastrointestinal problems and sleep disturbances. A lot of these things are very common. And the constant stress from anxiety in the relationship can actually weaken your immune system. And this is going to make you more susceptible to illnesses, even chronic illnesses like liver disease and heart disease and mental disorders. So you have to be very careful in your healing journey that we do not neglect the physical aspects of the trauma and the stress. And that is exactly why you're here in this course. Now, the mental health effects, as you're looking at depression, PTSD, chronic anxiety, and it also is going to really affect your self-esteem, your self-worth, your belief system, and even go so far as to affect your executive and cognitive functions. Your amygdala is the fight or flight, freeze, or fawn, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn center in your brain, and the hippocampus is your memory center. Now, when the amygdala gets activated and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and it stays activated, your hippocampus is actually going to shrink. And the purpose for that, actually, in survival purposes, is so that you don't remember the traumatic thing that happened. If you've ever heard, either you might have been in this situation or you may have heard other people with this that happens, is when something traumatic happens, you might notice people will say, I don't even remember what happened. I don't remember the wreck. I don't remember what happened right afterwards. I don't remember what happened after my best friend, passed away, or I don't remember what happened after my grandma passed away, or after we got robbed. Think about anything outside of this toxic relationship, but just in general your life. When traumatic things happen, our memory is cut off for a moment. And so, if your amygdala is constantly activated and it is getting bigger and bigger and it is pumping out all this cortisol and the adrenaline and all these chemicals that help you survive in in stressful situations, your hippocampus is shrinking and it's not retaining every single thing. And so that also makes it hard to break free and to stay out and to process your entire experiences, because a lot of it may have actually gotten either subconsciously forgotten or overtly forgotten. And again, this is why it makes it very hard to emotionally regulate and maintain your cognitive and executive functions, is because parts of your brain are shut off for extended periods of time that they should not have been. All right, so moving on, we've got trauma and well-being is what's next. So trauma from toxic relationship can actually hinder the ability to form and maintain healthy relationships. Take a look at your relationships in your life. How many of them are functioning at a very optimal level? It's a two-way streets. You have open communication. You're not afraid to communicate. They can communicate openly with you. There's no fighting back and forth. There's no ups and, constant volatile ups and downs. Everybody's going to have ups and downs, but this volatile state, how many relationships do you have that are consistently healthy? Victims of chronic toxic relationships may struggle really hard with trust issues. When you struggle with trust issues after a toxic relationship, it makes it really hard to form lasting, open relationships with other people, even if it's your boss, your neighbor, your friend. somebody that you see on a regular basis at a store or something. You it's very common to be socially isolated because of what happened in that toxic relationship. So, first and foremost, I don't want you to feel shame if this is what's happening with you. Give yourself permission to understand that this is something that happens scientifically, psychologically, and commonly. Okay, so you are not alone if you're relating to this part. You might also notice attachment issues. Now, this could be overly attaching or under attaching. Either way, there's a lack of balance with relationships and your dependence on other people. Now, let's look at that a little bit closer. If you're in a relationship with someone who is abusive, you trusted them to start with, you gave them a piece of you that was very vulnerable. You opened yourself up to them, and what did they do? They stomped on you, they destroyed you, they took advantage of you, they took you for granted, they bullied you, they tainted a very sacred exchange but between the two of you. And so if you step back from that and you realize, okay, this is what happened with somebody that I really trusted. Now we're going to look at new relationships. Well, this thing happened. I know that this thing happened. So I'm either going to over attach to somebody to try and keep that from happening again, or I'm going to detach and not let myself get in that situation in the first place. But maybe you're still in a relationship with this person, but this trust issue is really keeping a barrier between you. You're really not fully opening up to them. And I want you to understand that this is, again, normal, but it can be repaired. This is something that is not, it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Something else that this does is it keeps you from forming social networks, really healthy social networks. So we want to get behind it so that we can build our support network. We can build our connections so that we are no longer isolated and no longer alone on this journey, and we can be in communion and community with others. We need to remember our lives so that we can be a member of society. So the next thing to look at is the impact on your daily function. I mentioned that executive function can be impaired when you have experienced traumatic relationship. Being prolonged exposure to traumatic things will cause you to develop coping mechanisms. Now, those coping mechanisms are designed to get you through the initial event. That's what they're there for. But what happens is, if we don't unlearn those coping mechanisms once we're not placed in that environment anymore, then we're going to continue to do them.
I didn't get to finish yesterday the lesson that I was teaching, so I'm in a whole different outfit today. Sorry. When you don't unlearn your patterns that you used for the survival of your toxic relationship, that baggage comes with you, and until you unpack it, it's going to stay with you. When it stays with you, it takes up space. Whether you're or not you're thinking about it all the time, it's still in there, and the trauma that you endured that affected your physiology has not been cleared, has not been corrected, has not been repatterned and reframed. So it's continuing to have an effect on you to this day, whether you are fully conscious of it or not. And when it's gone on long enough, this becomes your pattern, it becomes your normal, so you really don't think about it going on later down the road. So the sooner you can address the issues, the better. If it's been a while, it's okay. We can still correct it. I'm just making the point that the longer you hold on to something, the harder it is to get rid of it. That's all. Now, with your physiology, I've been talking a lot about how trauma affects the body and how it does different things. And I just want to be very specific on the fact that it dysregulates the nervous system. And when your nervous system is dysregulated, you have things that show up in different ways. And a lot of times it's misdiagnosed as some kind of disease or dysfunction or syndrome or something or another, when really all you needed to do was clear the trauma, um, clear out your chakras and align your energy in your body and take care of just that, your physiology at its core, at its deepest level. And you can do that naturally, holistically, with all kinds of different ways without the poison of modern medicine. Headache, I think I mentioned this before, but headaches, gastrointestinal issues, weird pains and aches all over your body, joint pain, inflammation. Inflammation can also cause depression and mental disorders. Well, I'm going to call them disorders because it's really not a disorder. It's just a condition that you're in at the moment. Skin issues, rashes, sinusitis, and for 2 years I couldn't even breathe out of my nose. But as soon as I got out and I started over again, everything completely changed. I was completely free in my sinus cavities, which was something that I carried with me for a very, very long time. For 2 solid years, I couldn't breathe out of my nose. I got out, I did the work, and I was free from my ex, and it completely went away. And none of the modern medicine that I was trying actually worked. It wasn't until getting out and doing the mental clarity and all the alternative medicines that things began to change. Same with my itching literally from my head to my toes and everywhere in between and all around was really itching and rashing and painful. Getting out, taking care of my body, I am left with very minimal itching. That's actually because of small fiber polyneuropathy, which is a totally different subject. But point is that it wasn't widespread anymore. The inflammation went down, gut issues cleared up. Cravings that you have will subside when you are doing the proper work and you have your mental clarity in check. Clearing out these coping mechanisms of people pleasing, where you're trying to do everything that you can for the purpose of everyone around you except for yourself, and you're trying to appease everyone, make everyone happy, make sure that everyone likes you. This is a coping mechanisms from your toxic relationship. Self-love and lack thereof, your lack of self-compassion, your lack of self-grace, inability to just connect with yourself and feel comfortable in your own skin, being happy with yourself, being happy with your life, being satisfied with the work that you're doing, and just feeling as if you are fulfilling a purpose in your own life. Then you also have your nutrition. So one of the ways that our body is affected by trauma and toxic relationships is just by the very fact that we often reach for foods that are going to make up the difference for our poor mood or the feelings that we're having. And so we crave certain things, what we're actually doing is when we reach for certain foods, we're misinterpreting the messages that our body is sending us. Our body is very intelligent and knows exactly what it needs, and it sends us messages all the time, but we don't understand what it's saying because it's not part of our normal culture. And so we miss the cues a lot of times and we misunderstand what it's asking for. So I'll give you a prime example. Quite often, for me at least, and I know that this is scientifically proven as to why this happens, for me, I have a very, very strong sweet tooth. I also do not get thirsty. And what happens is at least I don't understand that I'm thirsty. Let me rephrase that. What happens is a lot of times I will reach for sweet things. I will get it in my head that, oh, I need something sweet right now. I need something sweet right now. I need something sweet right now. When really, I just need to hydrate. When I decide to listen to that cue in my body and understand that when I am feeling the urge to grab ice cream or chocolate or honey bun or donut or something like that, when I decide that instead I'm going to try water first in place of that craving, 99.99% of the time, the craving completely goes away because what I really needed was hydration. Now, I'm going to get into all of this later on in the course, but I just wanted to give you an example as to why we're going to get into that later in the course, is because it plays a huge part. That is emotional eating. It's the misinterpretation of our signals from our body, and we are also trying to soothe an ache, soothe a pain within us using a substance, an external substance, instead of what we already have within us that will do the job. We are provided everything that we need, both within ourselves, in the ether, and in the earth. Everything is provided that we could ever need for survival. Just don't listen to it. Our culture has changed, and it now has almost become taboo. What's the word? Crunchy? Is that what they call it now? It's crunchy to use the earth and all these alternative methods to take care of our bodies instead of, reaching for big pharma. I feel a tangent coming on. I'm gonna stop right here, but I just wanted to draw the connection for you as to what happens in trauma, specifically in toxic relationships, and how it affects our body. It completely wreaks havoc on our physiology. That's the bottom line. And so we're going to get into that in this course, so stay tuned.